Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is WeatherBrains episode number 873. 873, the weekly show that's all about weather. And yeah, my voice is still bad. It's not as bad as last week. I mean, last week I had nothing at all. So it's coming back, but I can't project. And so I don't want to be a distraction on the show tonight. So I probably won't be saying that much, but if I need to jump in, I can do that, which is good. So let's kind of get everything happening here. We're going to get the embed code fixed up. I've never seen Bill Murray wanting to enter the room so early. It's 6:49. This man is ready.
I've been sitting here for 30 minutes because I wanted you to ask me what I was having for dinner tonight.
Oh boy, I'm sure
we need to resurrect that.
Nasty, whatever it was.
I can get it up to my camera. There you go.
What is that? Shitterlings?
Leftover chicken tikka masala and aloo gobi.
I'm from Butler County, Alabama. I don't even know what that means. I have no idea.
I have already consumed the Indian pickles and the papadum. It's all gone. And the mint chutney. But
that just sounds nasty. So this is what I had for dinner right here. Some Ritz crackers, you see. I mean,
keeps you slim and trim, James, man.
It is what it is.
Well, I made a mistake last night. I love Baumhauer's wings. They're just the best. And so I would allow myself to have 9 Baumhauer's wings, but I went to the top of the scale on the heat and got the bring to pain. And it brought the pain.
Oh boy. You didn't have a blowout. Did you have a blowout?
I had a 7:30 meeting this morning, and I literally thought the Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster was in my tummy. And
I think Bill had a blowout. Bill's blowout. That could be a show title. And by the way, for those that are watching, if you're looking for the show content, please move the slider over about 9 minutes. Okay, I mean 9 minutes, and I promise you'll get to the show content. This is an important show tonight. But people that are new here, they always say, "What is this?" I mean, what are these jabronis talking about? I'm going to sit here and listen to this for 2 hours. This is the pre-show. It is the magical time where we share boring personal stories like the one you just heard, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we say really outrageous things. And that's what we do here. So you've heard Bill's personal story about eating hot wings, having a blowout in his bathroom at home, and he's eating Indian food tonight. So there you go. So in the movie Anchorman, in the movie Anchorman, when the reporter Brian Fantana put on Sex Panther and he walked into the newsroom trying to talk with the female anchor, Veronica Corningstone, everybody said, "What's that smell?" Oh, and they started running. And one guy said that it smelled like used diapers and Indian food. I thought that was interesting. That's one of the descriptions they used to describe the Sex Panther by Odeon cologne. And nobody will know what we're talking about here. We totally lost control.
I think I'm in the wrong chat room.
Yeah, no doubt. Please hang up and try again.
The simulation right now. We're obviously having a bad one. There was a Simpsons episode where Homer and Lisa were on the side of a hill, just hanging onto a tree, and a mountain lion was trying to attack them. And she had her little backpack, and he said, "What did you bring for your lunch? Throw it at them, and they'll eat it." And she pulls it out, and she goes, "It's Indian food," and she throws it, and he's like, "Now you just made them mad."
Wow. So I'm trying to figure out who we've offended here in the last 5 minutes. I mean, it's not good.
It's like the opening 10 minutes of Blazing Saddles. We've offended everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we just.
I'm not guilty because I love Indian food.
If you're still here, then you deserve a medal. But again, if you're looking for the show content, and I always when I promote the show on social media, I put the starting point for the actual show content there, so they don't have to listen to this. Is more of an inside thing for people that have listened to this for years and years. So
I'm not proud of the pre-show, James.
No, I'm just for the new people that don't get it. I'm sorry. That's
probably a few of those this week. So we did a good thing.
And again, my for those asking about my voice, I've had a bad sinus infection. That's all it is. I mean, they stuck a scope through my nose down my throat, and that's a hoot. That in itself will cause some voice problems. But they wanted to be sure there was no, paralysis or nodes or something going on down there. So that they said, buddy, you just got a really, really bad sinus infection. And on top of that, we've got these dew points like in the 20s and ragweed season.
Oh, yeah.
And so they say, what you need to do is, number one, voice rest. Like that's going to work when you talk for a living. I mean, how does that work? And then, sleep and live in a room with a dehumidifier. And when you work in television, that doesn't work either. So, we're just going to let it slowly come back on its own.
Well, if you're going to pick a week to have laryngitis, last week was a great week.
Yeah, it was.
The weather forecast was full.
And the problem, I had to go to this football game, Saturday night, and that is a very loud environment. Game?
And we call this basketball season now in Oklahoma.
Show title.
Has a moving man already shown up at Brent Rumble's house?
For sale signs are up. I don't know.
Let's play some up here.
Those are two of my favorite college fight songs. Texas and Oklahoma. To hear them in that one game is just fun.
It's a really cool experience. I
don't want to go when it's 49-0 though. That's not good.
Right. Get
the parity back here.
Yep. But you get the pick of the stadium, the whole south end of the stadium. You want to move seats several times.
I like that one guy who was in the Oklahoma outfit right in the middle of a bunch of Texas folks. Allison, you tuned in just in time for Football Brains.
Oh, great. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're on your ears though. You're sideways.
Oh, okay. You need me to go like this?
Oh, you can go however you want. Sideways, upside down, we don't care.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually, let's see if this will do this.
I think I retweeted somebody a few minutes ago that out of 114 college football teams that played Saturday, 113 scored. I'm like, oh.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Let me find something I'm going to find something and prop my phone up. Oh, this might work.
I got one for Jen.
And for Allison too.
That's right. Oh, I have not seen football in 3 weeks.
I know we did great this weekend because we had a bye week. We were
I
guaranteed
got Ohio
to win.
State coming up. When is that game? On the 21st?
Yeah, this week though was Michigan.
Anybody got room on the bandwagon for me?
Yeah, come on.
Okay.
Come on. I was there this weekend. It was awesome.
We might as well have had a bye week. It's like we didn't play a game.
Oh goodness.
All right. So we can't start until the top of the hour. And
is that when it goes national tonight? Is that we're on the national feed?
Yeah, right.
How are you feeling?
I feel great. I've not felt bad. It's a bad sinus infection, and it's just strange. I mean, a week ago tonight, it just went out.
Yeah.
And I mean, it stopped working. And when you talk for a living, that's a bad thing.
That's really bad.
And
So I put on social media that you had COVID. Darn, sorry about that, James.
Yeah, well, just make up something that sounds impressive. but no, I don't feel bad. I just don't have a voice. It's very frustrating. Very frustrating. So anyway, so all right. So yeah, we still got a minute to go here. Anybody want to say something outrageous before we hit the record button?
This is
your
why
big
we don't
chance.
start the show early anymore, because you used to have started early because of Google Hangouts, and Zoom is so reliable. All the guests can use it. It just makes it nice. Now we have to sit around and talk to each other. You should start making the pre-show only available to the newsletter members. Jen, that would be.
That'd be cool.
No, nothing that is less information. I learned that from Troy last week. No less information.
Hey, Allison, do you have a
Yes.
deadline when you got to be out of here?
So I got to do the 11. So 10:30. That's my deadline.
Okay,
Oh.
we're good.
Yeah.
We'll try to end about 9, but it may go a little long.
Yeah. I don't
10,
have
10,
any.
10 o'clock.
Thankfully,
Eastern.
Thankfully, the weather's been super quiet lately, so I don't have to be in any of the promotions before the 11. Leave that to the news people.
We're really thankful to have you on tonight. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And for those on the television side, welcome to our Monday night weather party. In fact, I guess we can go ahead and get this thing started since we're on television now. So let's get the recorders rolling here. Track 1 and track 2. We're officially exiting the pre-show, going into the real show. Here comes Troy. I think all of our people are here. I know Neil is out. He's got some deal out at in-car. All right, so let me change my soundboard. Somehow I got over to the college fight song soundboard. All right, here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Hey, they're kind of a big deal. That's Bill Curtis. I mean, how many shows have Bill Curtis to open them up like that? I mean, that's awesome. Welcome to WeatherBrains. This is the weekly show all about weather, episode number 873. And this is for the 10th of October, 2022. My voice is slowly coming back, but it's always a good thing when my voice is gone because the shows are much better when I'm not involved here. But
That's not true.
let's go up to Jen up there. Jen, tell me, how cold did it get last couple nights?
I don't know. I wasn't here.
Oh.
I can tell you how it was.
Ask her how cold it was in State College.
That's the show for tonight.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was cold in State College. I went to Penn State this weekend and for an alumni event, which hopefully we'll be able to talk more about in the next few weeks. I'm trying to plan something for the show, but we had the 50th anniversary of campus weather happened this weekend, and we had several folks that came back, and it was a wonderful time. And my niece is there, so I got to hang out with her as well. I got me some new
Yay.
stuff. So it was
We
fun.
are
Penn State.
Yay.
checking those
Yeah.
reflexes.
Yeah, we were down in the 30s. We did get some frost on the pumpkins there and here. I did here. So
I am coming to the Ohio State University.
you are.
So I can't wait. That'll be a lot of fun.
That's right.
In my ripe old age, I'm kind of like Johnny Cash. I've been everywhere, man. But for some reason, I have never been to Columbus, Ohio, or the Ohio State University campus, which is odd.
When are you getting there, James? We need to know this.
It's
because we may have to have a WeatherBrains gathering.
Yes, I'm excited.
I think we need to do that. It is, let me see here, in February.
Mhm.
Looks like the 9th and 10th and the 11th, somewhere in that time frame in there. So
that sounds like a road trip.
yeah, that's going to be a lot of
blizzard road trip. Yeah.
fun. Yes, right. Yeah.
I was
yeah.
just thinking nothing like a road trip to Ohio in February.
That's right.
Yeah. What can go wrong with this? So let's go down to our Texas correspondent, Troy. What's a word down there? I sense there's something on your mind, so just get it out. Go.
Oh, I'm sitting here and watching Rick and James from Tulsa and other places for the last 2 weeks. And I'm serious, and y'all agree with me here. For the last 2 weeks, we've had strong cold fronts out at 7 and 8 days, and the damn things never materialize. They just are not coming south. And again, today it's out there at 6 or 7 days. And for some reason, we still bite on the hook. I think something will happen beginning of next week, but today, 90 degrees at Camp Mabry, Jen, and the 30 up through yesterday, 32 straight days with no precip. I don't mean any traces. I mean no precip for 32 days now in Austin. So.
Wow. Well, let's blame it on our Oklahoma correspondents.
There we
Rick,
go.
It's your fault. Rick, it's all your problem there. So send this man to cold front, please.
I'll accept all the blame. It was 76 degrees and cloudy most of the day here today.
Oh.
It even rained a little bit. So I'm sorry. I got to rub it in about something. So, Troy, congrats to your, I can hardly say it, your Longhorns on the game Saturday.
But they're not his Longhorn.
No, I was happy about my Aggies. Now we don't.
You had a 50-50 chance to win that game.
No, I'm serious. We almost
42nd
came in,
play.
but Rick, that was just a bizarre ball game. The OU Texas ball game was just bizarre.
Well, as my business partner and loyal listener, Brian Morgan says, and he'll get a kick out of being called out on the show. He's a Kansas Jayhawk. So Kansas hosting game day. Oklahoma loses third straight. And as Brian says, we're living in a bad simulation and it's about to be rebooted. So everything will go back to normal shortly.
Yes, it will.
But the Aggie Alabama game, though, that was a good game. I enjoyed that game.
I always like looking at the little game cast thing on ESPN, what's the probability of a win? And A&M was 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, you get up to 12, down to 9. And then all of a sudden it shot up to 50 on that last play.
It's like that cold front cool. 7 days from now here in Austin.
Yep. Cam, would you please get us off of football? Please help us. Please.
Sure. Well, I just really quickly want to say to all of my OU brethren, growing up a Purdue fan, I have some advice to give on how to cheer for a team that might not win any more games in the season, conceivably. And what you do is you just celebrate every little victory. So when I was a Purdue student, we had a cheer for the first down. Every time there was a first down, we had this whole 1, 2, 3, 4 first down, like a whole chant.
Cheer.
And when I came to OU, I was stunned. Like, oh my gosh, they just golf clap and then they keep going. Like the first downs just breeze by. And it's really easy to take things for granted. I want you to relish those beautiful moments when things go right, because those will be the things you celebrate. Like right now, you celebrate touchdowns. So that's piece number one. Piece number two.
That's not going to work. I don't think that's going to work, Kim.
Well, it's never too late to turn our attitudes around. There's a little bit of attitude adjusting that needs to go on here in town, because there are some people for whom this is a life soul crushing event. And we have rebuilding years. We're creating a football team from scratch, man. Like, not only this team, but the whole coaching staff. Let's have some really realistic expectations, and then just do the things you need to do to enjoy what we have fun with it. Everyone knows what the situation is. At this point, everyone dreads the same thing happening to them, because now we've realized we can commercialize college football the same way that professional is, commercialized. So this could be anybody tomorrow. Just show everybody that you can survive it and stay a fan. We'll be behind you, Sooners. So that's what I've got to say about football. I'm still cheering for you guys. And, it's even more impressive, and it's a better fanship when you can cheer when it's tough.
You have to have the bad times to appreciate the good times. That's the way I look at it.
No, come on, James.
No.
How silly.
James, you had an amazing stat on the tweeter here. And we'll get off football here in a minute. Go through that again. How many games? And go through that stat one more time.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
114 teams played college football games Saturday, and 113 of them scored points.
Wow.
That said, Troy, we had 8 100ths of an inch of rain here today. It was 73 degrees, which is 73 more than points OU scored Saturday.
I'm out of here. We'll have the 90-degree WeatherBrains show, and I'll have my own thing over here. Okay.
All right.
The merchandise is really cheap though now for OU stuff. Woo.
And let me look while we're talking here. I promise Bill's going to bring in our guest here. I mean, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. If you take out that bad choke job to LSU, they would be in the top 10 easily. I mean, they would be undefeated, and they're looking strong. And they're going to Kentucky, and then they've got to play at Alabama. So it's going to be an interesting set of games for the Dogs here. But Bill Murray, bring in our guest before she hangs up and runs. Please.
Tonight, we are honored to be joined by the chief meteorologist from NBC2 in Fort Myers, Allison Ray. Allison, thank you for joining us tonight on short notice. I couldn't believe we got you, but I'm really thrilled you're here. And you listened to the show last week, so you know what we talked about. This one's been hard for us, even remotely. I know it's been really, really hard for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's nice to hear some talk of football and talk of normalcy, because we don't know what normal is for the past week or so. So, yeah, the past couple of weeks have been kind of turned our whole town on its head, to say the least. So it's been quite the struggle. So I envy the days where we sit around on Fort Myers Beach and watch football again. But it's going to take a while.
I know it will. We hope they come back as soon as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. I was shocked to see that there had not been a direct landfalling major hurricane by my records in Fort Myers since 1873. There've been tropical storms. There've been a couple of category 1s and 2s. Charlie had, moved inland, right over really the same place, just on a different trajectory. But Fort Myers couldn't claim a direct hit. And that was really shocking to me. But in that 1873 hurricane, there was a 14-foot storm surge at Punta Raza, right there at the foot of the Sanibel Bridge. So I wish I had looked at that earlier. I looked at it post-hurricane, and I wish I had looked at that earlier, because I think that was an important piece of information. We've been living a charmed life, but, it has happened before, and it will happen again. Talk about that for a second. The close calls, how that affected things.
Well, one thing about that storm that hit Punta Rasa, I was talking to a historian about a year ago, and he's writing a whole book on how Fort Myers is where it is today because of that storm in Punta Rasa. They were originally planning to be there, but then the storm came on through and just basically, took out anything that would be possible to build. So Fort Myers is where it is, which is inland a couple miles up the Caloosahatchee River because of that storm. So obviously no one knows about that storm because it was so long ago. So we only have recent history to go off of. We have Charlie and Irma, the big ones that people talk about. Donna too, but that one's a little bit farther back. Irma was really frustrating, and I knew it was going to be something that made our next storm deadly. Irma was a horrible storm. Irma was forecast to have a lot of storm surge. It was supposed to come at more of a parallel trajectory to our coastlines. But by it moved about 25 miles to the east, and its landfall was totally different. Its landfall was now in Marco Island instead of Fort Myers, Sanibel. And that totally changed the storm surge forecast. So storm surge came to fruition east of it. But west of it along the coastlines, it didn't happen. And a lot of people said, well, you told us to evacuate it, and it said this is going to be the worst storm and all this storm surge, and my house was fine. So I was so worried that people weren't going to evacuate again, because, well, why would it? You said we were going to get 15 feet of storm surge last time, and it didn't happen. And I was here through Irma, and I was here through Donna, and I'm fine. So why would I evacuate again? And that was my biggest fear. And that's exactly what happened. So the storm did stay on its path. And even if it went to Tampa, it didn't matter. We were still expecting storm surge. So it came through in the storm surge forecast. Not only were they correct, which gives me chills, it's that a lot of people, Wednesday morning before landfall, I woke up and they had upped the storm surge. So that's how confident the National Hurricane Center was that, hey, you guys have 2 hours, you got to get out. It was a scary couple of days. You don't want to, I feel like sometimes I talked to some meteorologists during Harvey and I said, you see those numbers, you don't want them to come to fruition. You're thinking, no way, there's no way that can happen. And it does. And I think that's the chilling part.
James, if you'll allow screen sharing in a moment, I want to show a couple of images to Allison and let her answer a question that Kim had earlier today, perhaps anecdotally for us. Then I know Troy's got a question. But in watching your 7:00 newscast Tuesday night, Allison, I was moved by the reporter who was at the Hertz Arena. Mm-hmm. And she said there were 6,000 people here during Irma, and there are less than 400 here tonight. Do you know what that final number worked out to be? Because I thought that would be a good benchmark for, how the evacuations went for Ian.
So I don't know the final number, but definitely the evacuations were a little bit later. I was surprised. I texted some friends of mine Monday morning. They didn't issue Lee County evacuations until Tuesday morning. I texted some of my friends Monday morning and I said, anyone in Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, they got to go. Get them on the road before they issue the evacuations, and the one bridge is backed up. It's going to be a traffic nightmare. And then when they didn't issue the evacuations, I kind of felt, okay, I felt a little silly making such a big deal about it on Monday morning, and the evacuations didn't come till Tuesday. I think the people in the shelters were not as high because the evacuations came later. And at that point, some people were already at work, didn't have time to come home, pack the bags, get out. And that's the only reason I can think that people didn't get going as much as they did with Irma. Also, you think about Fort Myers Beach, those people have lived there their whole lives. They've been there. These are not Fort Myers Beach on the northern part of the island where it really kind of took that main brunt of the storm. These are not huge mansions with seasonal residents. These are people that have lived there and do live there and work there. It kind of have that Florida pride about them and say, I'm not leaving. I've been here through Donna. I've been here through Irma. And that always scares me too. So I think that Florida pride kept people there. This is my beach. This is my home. I'm going to stay here. And I think that's why. And I don't think the shelters opened. I think by Tuesday we were still, hey, what shelters are open? Where can people go? And I think there was still a lot of questions with that.
I know Max Mayfield once said, and I bet Troy remembers this, that Hurricane Camille probably killed more people in Hurricane Katrina on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, than the actual hurricane because of that. Mm-hmm. That same thing. I've been through Camille. What could be worse? And no hurricanes ever the same. Well, Kim asked a question today, and I know Troy's champing at the bit here, but I pulled up the Sarah site from LSU, and I think they do such a great job. And so this is above ground inundation right here. Kim, ask your question.
I'm really interested to see what the perspective on the ground is and what's been verifying. So the Hurricane Center surge forecast is a reasonable worst case scenario forecast. So that means that depending on what the distribution of outcomes is like, you could have a tail end event that maybe doesn't happen, and that could be expected. But it seemed like in this case, there were a lot of places that were reporting exactly what the Hurricane Center had put out in that worst case scenario forecast. And I was kind of wondering on the ground, what is the thinking on how that's verified? Is it just a couple of places that had that worst case surge? Is it a big swath of places? Does this pretty much, what you're seeing on the screen, does that pretty much look like what the Hurricane Center had put out?
So I think that a lot of it is pretty accurate. This was a worst case scenario. So a couple of things, in Fort Myers Beach, where you saw some of those homes, single story homes, anything that was not built as of late, they lifted up and floated away, or they're just completely inundated. Once you headed on the mainland, farther south near Punta Rassa and southern parts of south of Gladiolus Road, there was substantial storm surge as well, up to the houses. So that would be, 12, 15 feet. I did see a couple of surveyors out there in my neighborhood today taking some measurements. I don't think they're done with the measurements just yet. What was interesting to me was, I do think it was pretty accurate. The problem with Fort Myers Beach is most of those homes aren't new. So you go to Sanibel, a lot of the homes are going to be 2-story, 3-story. You go to Pine Island, after they got wrecked from Charlie, they rebuilt stronger. They still had a lot of damage, but maybe not as devastating. And this is all relative because there are still a lot of devastation out there, as catastrophic as Fort Myers Beach was. And also, when you talk about Fort Myers Beach, behind the island, on the northern part of the island, on the bay side, you have a ton of mobile homes that literally just picked up and are thrown into mangroves. Cape Coral, there was a lot of storm surge, not deadly enough like it was in Fort Myers Beach. And I say that, I'm sure there were some casualties that I'm not aware of. But Cape Coral, I was worried it would have been a lot worse, and it was still really bad. But one thing that's interesting, you see the red marks all the way up the Caloosahatchee, closer to 75. It's a little small. I'm on my phone, but that's where I live, up there. So not only was this worst case with the trajectory and the speed and the size of this storm, you also had the Caloosahatchee just take all that water and funnel it up. So anyone on a canal in North Fort Myers, I live in North Fort Myers, anywhere along the coast just got 6-7 feet of water. So I think it's really accurate of worst case scenario. I kept telling my neighbors, if it would have moved 10 miles to the south, we wouldn't have had so much where we lived, but then you would have had more storm surge in more southern parts of Florida, of course. But you see the track there, and it just funneled everything into the Caloosahatchee. So you didn't have to be beachfront to be impacted by this.
Yeah, that's just shocking. And I think it's interesting to hear that validation. I did hear, I can't remember if it was Mike Brennan or Jamie Rome, Wednesday morning, using the words catastrophic and talking about 16 feet. And they were, doing a great job, get that information out there. These guys are storm surge experts. And, this is powerful. Troy, you take it.
Well, I want to come back to something that when Allison and Rich was with us last week, that from up in Tampa, I wanted to ask you as well, because I know this, you're not going to find, you talk to Kim and other people in here that know a lot about how you get people to react to things. It's not usually one thing. It's a combination of things that all combine. But one thing, Allison, to me, and I want to see what your thought was on this. Thank you for joining us tonight, by the way.
You're welcome. Thank you.
On that Tuesday evening when we went to bed, the thought that in general, the center itself would be headed more toward Tampa Bay, right? And then, of course, and that's when the storm was over Dry Tortugas and kind of west-northwest of Key West. Mm-hmm. And of course, it went through the eye wall replacement cycle. And then, during the night, it picked up more of a northeasterly movement, not quite as much as a north. And so, Allison, when we got up the next morning, all of a sudden the storm, the eye wall, was already coming into Fort Myers the next morning. And I'm wondering, when people went to bed on a Tuesday night, from what we thought it'd be closer to Tampa, do you think that kind of made people think, well, it's headed more toward Tampa? Sure, we're on the storm surge side, but it'll be up a little further north. And then bing, bang, boom, 12 hours later, after you've been asleep, it's sitting outside your door. Was that a factor at all with people's maybe being kind of surprised by the severity?
perhaps if they were listening to my station, they shouldn't have been surprised.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I really think that by Sunday night, my team and I were really discussing the possibility of this is making landfall in Charlotte County. This is going to be a problem. And that wasn't the main forecast. A lot of the main models had it going still to Tampa. We were still, every time they issued the cone, we were a little bit more in the cone, a little bit more in the cone. And our Barron's model, we have a Barron's product. They did Irma very well. They did a hindsight forecast with Charlie that did very well, that nailed that term. And it was Saturday night that I looked at their long-term model, their 15K, and it had it coming into Florida, into Charlotte County. And I said, okay, well, let's not show this yet because it's a long time away and I don't want to freak everybody out, but let's see how each model run goes over the next 24 hours. Because I'm not going to show one model run that's just rogue. And by Sunday night, I think it was Sunday night at 11, it was still coming right into our region. And so my team and I sat there and discussed like at what point, because it was kind of the outlier. It was most of the models were going to the north and ours was consistently showing, that Barron's model was consistently showing into Charlotte County. We said, okay, at what point do we say, get ready for landfall when that's not even, there are no evacuations yet there. We went under watches on Sunday night. And I think by Sunday night after the 11, at the 11 o'clock, I think they started to issue watches for our region. I said, Monday morning, we just kind of turned on, we kind of just went forward a little bit harder and faster of saying, you guys need to prepare for the possibility that this could land in our region. We're in the cone and understand what the cone is. It's only the center of the storm and it keeps nudging farther south. And the best thing we can hope for, if it goes a little bit to the west and a little bit to the north, it's honestly best case scenario for everybody because it could get into some of that wind shear and weaken in general. But if it keeps nudging south and nudging east, we're in a huge problem because it's going to be stronger and we're going to have more storm surge. So by Monday, we were saying, prepare for the possibility, like get your plan together, prepare for this possibility. By Tuesday night, I guess it was, Tuesday night, I went to bed knowing we were in for it. Tuesday night was a really hard night for me. I'm pretty sure I had a panic attack, just of the weight of what was happening, the weight what was in the forecast. Just how do I put this into words? I kept having images of the water levels during Harvey and thinking, obviously this is different surge versus rain, but I'm thinking, is this what I'm going to wake up to on Thursday morning? But I was pretty confident by Monday into Tuesday that we were going to be dealing with a little bit more than what people were thinking. And you get a lot of people that just look at, even people in my building that aren't meteorologists come and say, oh, I saw what the 18Z GFS did. And it's like, okay, all right, guys, let's put this into context here. Even if it goes to Tampa, that's the best we can hope for right now. And it still could be catastrophic. So I think I thought it was going to Tampa thing is frustrating for me because those people on the beach still should have been evacuated, even if it went to Tampa. They were still looking at 4 to 7 feet of storm surge minimum. And then it just kept getting higher and higher. So I felt in my gut and based on, I had to put confidence in a model that had proved itself. And no, it's not one of the main models. And yeah, it was an outlier, but fool me once, shame on me. But this happened. This is the third time it nailed a forecast.
So Allison, talk about the timing of the mandatory evacuations there in Lee and Charlotte counties. I know that by 7 p.m. when I first saw your broadcast, those evacuations for A and B were in effect, but I don't know how long that had been. Comment on that.
So Monday, Charlotte County had evacuations for Zone A. Maybe B, I'm not sure, but it was definitely Monday that Charlotte County had their evacuations up and ready. Our Lee County evacuations were not ordered until Tuesday at 9 a.m., I believe. And then they followed up with more throughout the day. And, I don't know what happens in those rooms. I know that I'm not there. So I know my forecast. I know the National Hurricane Center has the same forecast, if not more precise. I don't know what goes into those decisions. So I can't weigh on, they should have done this, they should have done that. I just think that the forecast by Monday, especially for a barrier island with limited roads, I would have said, hey, let's be safe than sorry, especially better safe than sorry and when you look at, we got a list of all the people that did die from the storm. Yeah, the age ranged from 19 to 90 something, but most of them were over 70. So we hear these heroic stories from people that got to the second level of their house, were able to swim from their house to a higher house. An 85-year-old is not going to get up on top of the roof and swim. So just thinking about the demographics of the island, thinking of the bridges, limited bridges to the island, even with just a couple of feet of storm surge, I would be like, I'm out of here, and that's why I kind of made that case on Monday night. Like, hey, you're not under evacuation yet for Lee County. I would highly consider leaving. If I lived on Sanibel, if I lived on Fort Myers Beach, I would be packing my bags tonight. And I made that clear.
And that was the right message. I remember vaguely Wayne Saladay from Charlotte County, who was there in Charlie, being a very, vocal, frank person. And Max Mayfield had something on his Facebook page yesterday that made me go and look at Wayne's post. And I went all the way back to the beginning of the storm, and he was literally in all caps standing on his head the entire time for Charlotte County, and in no uncertain terms, and addressing individual people like you do, James Spann, and their specific questions. Some of them really resonated with me. There was a young single mom, 2 kids, a dog, petrified, didn't know what to do. And, she said, I'm in B, should I stay? And he was in all caps. No, there is no can't in dealing with a major hurricane. Put your big girl pants on and get out of there for your kids. And I thought, now that's a message that, probably made that lady move, I hope. It's hard, but it's hard to balance that scaring people to death and overhyping something.
Right. I think that you're not trying to scare people. And I think with Irma, the evacuations were so, like, the whole state was trying to leave. This was, Miami was trying to leave. Fort Myers was trying to leave. Tampa was trying to leave. Orlando. There was nowhere in the state you could go. Everyone was trying to leave. This, I think, was, hey, I'm not trying to scare you where you need to take off and head to Georgia. I just need you to get east of 75 for the day. Find a friend, find anybody. And we had a lady email us and say, I got in my car and I drove east of 75 and sat in my car at the Dollar General until the storm went through. And then I came back and my house was flooded. I think it's a big burden to ask people to evacuate. You're asking people to spend hundreds of dollars on gas, on food. And what if it doesn't come to fruition? Then, someone that doesn't have the means to spend all that money, just spend all that money. That's a lot to ask of people, but I was clear, hey, if you are in evacuation zone A, it's Wednesday morning, you have a few hours, find anyone, a coworker, a friend, anyone, get east of 75. That's all you need to go. That's a 20-minute drive. And I think by Wednesday night, realizing the severity of it, it's as much as you say, and I don't even remember a lot of it that I said, because I think the whole week was a blur. Did I say it even enough? Did I do enough? You feel this weight of kind of guilt of, gosh, this is so bad. It was exactly what was forecast, and it was so hard to see. The images were just horrible. And, you see images like that from all the storms. You see them. We're not the first area to go through a storm. Katrina's happened. Harvey has happened. Michael, I was there for Michael. everyone's been through, not everyone, obviously, there's just been so many towns that have been through storms like this. But when you know it's coming and then you see it happen to your own town and you try to warn people, it's the weight of that is really a lot. It's a lot. And I get frustrated too sometimes when, or you do the stories of before the storm. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm from out of town, never seen a hurricane. I should stay and see what this is all about. And, this isn't a spectator sport. This is a hurricane.
You'll only do it once.
And and it's, I don't know. I just somehow, and I know you guys talked a lot about messaging last week about the forecast. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about. But also I think the messaging of the internet world of what a hurricane is needs to change. The meme culture of, oh, I'm a Floridian, it's a Cat 4, hold my beer type of, memes, or people standing out in the middle of storms and as the wind blows. Like, this is not a spectator sport. This is not something to be taken lightly. And I think not only does our forecast messaging have to change somehow, but I think that the severity of what weather and Mother Nature can do needs to somehow shift.
It's really interesting to think about all of that, all of these factors that can be going on in a person's mind. In the social sciences, we talk about how important it is for people to have both an accurate threat assessment, but to couple that with the means of taking some kind of action and knowing what kinds of actions they can take and how efficacious those will be. Something we're talking about in chat right now is another thing that was maybe difficult with this particular case. The average cost of evacuation is higher than a lot of people probably think it is. I need to see where the figure is that I'm citing, but this was a discussion item this past week within my research team. The average cost of evacuation is over $1,000 for most people. And just below 50% of the US population has as much as $500. So not even half what is needed. Half of the population does not have that on hand in case of an emergency. Add to that the fact that this happened at the very end of the month, right before most people would have gotten their paycheck. And so a lot of people at the end of the month were probably running low anyway. So in addition to these headwinds of the psychology, we also have the household economics of the choice. And together, it may be unsurprising what people would bring to that forecast is a hope that it would be a bust, in part because maybe they didn't have any other option.
Yeah, I was hoping it'd be best. I am more than willing to take all the mean emails of, you were wrong, you said it was going to be this. And I would have much rather had 1,000 emails the next day about how I was the worst forecaster. And how dare you take up all this primetime television for a storm that never came to fruition. I was hoping for that. And it breaks my heart. And honestly, it brought me to tears that it wasn't. I woke up Wednesday coming in ready for landfall, and there were images of people swimming by the Naples Pier and taking on all those waves. And the Naples Pier, besides the pilings, doesn't exist right now. So, people weren't heeding the warnings even as late as Wednesday. And some people did, and a lot of people did. They said, we heard what you said, we're out of here. But how do we get the rest of the people that think, it's a complex situation. It's a complex conversation. There are so many factors to it. Means, ability to leave, how much notice they have. It's a monetary thing. There's no easy solution. And I guess what I have to come to grips with is that I can only do so much, and I'm only one piece of the puzzle of a greater deal of how to save as many lives as possible.
Yeah, Allison, you brought up a really good point. And I think maybe non-meteorologists don't realize some of the struggles that go on in our heads with forecast. I mean, we're scientists, and contrary to what people believe, we don't want to get it wrong. We don't want to do a bad job. We want to have an accurate forecast. But in these situations, like you just said, it would be, you really hope it's a bust. So as a scientist, that verification is there in your head. You don't want to be wrong over and over again. but you want to be wrong in this case. And I just don't think people realize, whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, even a winter storm, you see schools closing the night before and you're like, oh my gosh, I hope it snows, that kind of thing. But I mean, that's got to be, I know it's got to be mentally exhausting. And I just applaud you for the work that you do and for working where you do, because I could never do it. So I don't know if you had any more thoughts on that. And I got one more follow-up question.
It is mentally exhausting, but this is kind of the price we pay to live in Florida. You think it's never going to happen to you. You think, okay, it's never going to be that bad. I don't know. I guess I kind of lost my train of thought on that, but I think that getting people, I don't know how to get more in touch with people, because a lot of people aren't even watching TV anymore. So how do I reach out to those people that are only getting their information from, I don't even know where they're getting their information. How do they know that a storm is coming and they need to prepare 3-4 days in advance? Yeah.
Okay, appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't ask a well-formed question there. I don't want to divert the conversation, because I know we're talking about a lot of the before the storm, but just because we're there right now, kind of an after the storm, and I don't want to get too personal, but I'm always just curious. The Weather Service is getting more into the mental health aspects of our job and helping people before, during, and after a storm. Does the media have resources that the things that you can do, or again, I don't want to get into personal stuff, but are there resources? Are there counselors? Or is there anything that for your station or any others that you know of to kind of help with this hard part after the storm?
Yeah, our company has been great. Waterman Broadcasting, they've been great. They're having counselors come in Wednesday for us. I remember coming in Thursday morning and being like, I'm going to have to talk to someone about this. Middle of the coverage, I was getting pictures of my neighborhood with water up to the stop sign. So I'm trying to find out if my neighbors are still okay. No idea what my home looks like, while still telling people about the storm on 2 hours of sleep over the course of how many days. You're exhausted, you're emotional, you feel like and what was really unfortunate was a lot of the other stations got kicked off the air. So our neighbors at the CBS affiliate Wink, their station had significant flooding. They were in danger. I think our Fox affiliate had technical issues getting on air. ABC and NBC are of the same company. We're under the same roof here. So we just combine forces. And so we have we're the only people here to give information. So you have got to keep going and keep giving people information because they need it. It was a lot. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't know. A lot of it is because you're tired. And I think I felt a little bit better after a good night's sleep. But yeah, we were really shaken, I think. My team and I kind of sat there in awe of what happened to our town and how did this all play out in the course of 4 days. It just all kind of happens. It snowballed of like, okay, keep ramping up the messaging. And to take it all in of, oh my gosh, it happened. It's so bad. And it happened to me too. And just to keep showing up to work is a lot. So yes, my company is amazing and they've offered some mental health resources for Wednesday morning just to kind of talk it out. I've talked to a couple of my meteorologists that I've always, talked to and that have been through Harvey or Katrina. And I'm just like, hey, how do you get through this, and how do you deal with the next one? Because unfortunately, this is going to happen again. And I think the weirdest thing for me is knowing I've been through storms. I've been doing meteorology on air since 2007. And I've seen other storms happen, and but I'll be okay is not always true.
And I know James is coming up, James A is coming up, but just want to throw in a plug. You mentioned talking to other people. That peer support is huge. I mean, we've had employee assistance program counselors come to our office, and they helped. They did a good job, but they're not meteorologists, and they've never worked a hurricane or a tornado event. So nothing beats, in my opinion, talking to your peers and having that support network. I'm so glad to hear that you've got that and that your station is taking care of you.
Yeah, it is really great. I mean, yeah, meteorologists, it's hard. It's like you can forecast the future, but you don't want that future, and then when you see it come, you're like, wow, that was not what I wanted.
Hey, Allison, I know you kind of combined forces with your duopoly there. How many Mets did you have? How did you pace yourself through this? Because obviously your pre-storm messaging is critical. You want to do that as well as you can, but how do you say while the storm's hitting, that's not just as critical, or the aftermath of the storm is not just as critical? You're looking at several days in a row that is not only exhausting, but you have personal worries in all of that too. I'm used to severe weather where it's at most a few hours of that acute worry and concern and stress from communicating and performing, for lack of a better phrase, because we all want our communication to be flawless and not mess that up. How did you guys with the manpower staff that and pace yourselves, because you're in for a marathon and not a sprint and something like that?
So fortunately, we have a lot of meteorologists. On the NBC side, we have 5. And then on the ABC side, we have 4. We just kind of broke it up in relative shifts of about 12 hours. And there was a lot of overlap, especially on Wednesday, just because landfall was coming. It looked like at first, maybe Tuesday night, we were expecting landfall maybe around Wednesday evening. And then Wednesday morning, I was like, okay, this looks more like a midday type of thing. So that crossed paths a little bit faster, but you just take your time. And I hear what you're saying with the flawless delivery. That can be, you want people to really not have any distractions when they're listening to you. But I think sometimes just taking your time, and if you want to go back on your words and say, okay, actually, let me revisit that and make this more clear to you. I think the flawed delivery is okay in those long-term scenarios because you're being real and you're being honest and you're just taking your time. I tell all the producers, do not wrap me unless the governor is on, unless the president is on. Do not give me a wrap. No one cares anything else about unless what our meteorologists are saying. We have producers and reporters all across the field. That is important information. But right now, let me just talk for 7 minutes about the timing of the winds, and you just take your time. And then when you're done, you go to something else, and then someone else picks up, okay, you just talked about the winds. I'm going to talk about storm surge, and you talk about it for 10 minutes, and you just take your time. And we know when it's tornadoes. I've covered tornadoes in Alabama. I worked in Montgomery for a while. And that is go, 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 urgency, urgency, take cover, minute by minute, what's going to happen. Leading up to this, we have days. So you just go slow, pace yourself. We're in no hurry. We are going nowhere. So the slower, the better. And then also that gives people a little bit more of a reassurance of, okay, they're just going to give me if I spit it all out, I'm going to scare people and say, oh my gosh, it's going to happen this. You need to know about storm surge now. You need to know about winds now. You need to know about tornadoes now. We'll get to it. Just stay here. We have hours. We'll get you informed. So, and thankfully you can with the 9 meteorologists. And when we're on staff, I have 4 to go to. It really benefits us because you can take your time instead of just kind of filling air. I can take my time and spend 20 minutes getting something really valuable for the viewers to see instead of just throwing something on. So it really helps.
I've got one follow-up question about pre-storm messaging, because you've got multiple counties issuing multiple evacuation orders, possibly voluntary evacuation suggestions in there for their various zones in each county. And you've got 3 TV stations going, plus people are relying on social media for more information. How much overload or ambiguity do you think people were hit with for messaging this storm? I know you guys had a pretty consistent message through this, but people are no doubt changing channels or looking on social.
Yeah. Obviously numbers were up, people were tuned in, people were paying attention. I think the messaging was clear, like, hey, we're getting a hurricane. And I think that no matter who they were listening to, of like, oh, it's going to hit Tampa or Charlotte County or whoever, they knew that a Cat 4 was coming. And the message was clear that this is not going to be maybe it could weaken before landfall. We knew, okay, this is going to be bad. It's where, and I said, hey, it's going to be bad. It's just, are we going to get high storm surge? Are we going to get the worst winds? Are we going to get the worst rain? Like, we don't know who's going to get what. There was that swath of 28 inches that the GFS kept spitting out up through Tampa, and then it kept moving down. I said, hey guys, be on alert. This could easily be for DeSoto County. This could be easily for Charlotte County if it moves farther south. So I think the messaging may have been, oh, it's going to Tampa. Oh, it's coming here. I think most people knew there's a huge storm out there, and whether they prepared or not, I don't think was so much on the actual, honestly, I don't think it was so much on the actual forecast. I think we could have shouted from the roofs for 2 weeks saying if I knew that there was 16 foot of storm surge coming, people ascertain the risk on prior storms. They think, hey, I got through Charlie, I'll be okay. And I kept saying, this isn't Charlie. And this is not Charlie. It has a similar path as Charlie. This is a storm much bigger. And it's going to have different impacts. And, we mentioned Camille to Katrina. I kind of compared Irma to Ian. Now, there were places like Bonita and Estero, which were south of Fort Myers that, fared okay. Lots of roofs here or there. There's going to be a storm that hits them hard. And they're going to say, well, you said Ian was the worst that there was, and we were fine. So I think the messaging was clear. This was a big storm. I just think people made decisions based on what they felt was right for their family. And a lot of people did evacuate. A lot of people did leave. And I think that made a big difference, but not enough.
In the heat of the storm, Allison, and as power outages started to really increase, how else were you and your team able to communicate? Did you simulcast on radio?
Mm-hmm.
How did you increase maybe some of your social media presence as well?
So we simulcasted on multiple radio stations for as long as we could. Some of the radio stations, I think, lost connection as well. And then we were on our YouTube channel. So if people somehow had power, they could watch us on their YouTube, and that's one of my big things when I talk about hurricane preparedness. I go to a bunch of communities all throughout the year and say, well, okay, what do you need in your kit? My biggest thing is grab the battery powered radio. It's old school. You haven't seen one in years, but it's $7 for a reason, but that's going to be how, if we're talking about an Armageddon situation, and you need to know where food is, where water is, where your loved one is, where your pet is, that's going to be where you find information. So.
Allison, I'd like to shift track a little bit here. No pun intended. Seriously, but go and shift to you a little bit, because you also went through the storm. You've hinted at some of the feelings you had as it approached. And I think I want to follow up on it and just learn more. As meteorologists, so often we're transplants. We get transported to these communities where these awful things are on the horizon, and we're giving people, advice on how to prepare. And they have, the communities and families and all these things that they're doing. And, it was like in your situation, you had to work the event, and
Mm-hmm.
you were busy being there, doing all of that. I'm curious what, if anything, you were doing to prepare yourself, what that was like. Are you sitting there thinking, what can I even be doing? I should be doing something.
Yeah.
Just walk us through what that was like.
It was a lot. I remember, I think it was Tuesday morning. I think it was, the days are confused. It could have been Monday morning. I was at my local fire station getting sandbags with the rest of my neighbors. And now that I realize that the sandbags would only have helped like an inch of water and I had 3 feet. So the sandbags and my hurt back were not worth it. But it was interesting because I was there shoveling sand into these sandbags and I probably loaded up, like my goal was to get 20. And I was the youngest person there shoveling sandbags and my back hurt so bad. And I was like, well, I cannot complain because my neighbors are going to laugh at me, tell me to go cry a river. Because, you know, I was shoveling sandbags. I was getting water, telling my husband, okay, you're going to take the dogs and you're going to go here. I was like looking at where all my friends lived. And I said, you need to go to this house. He's like, can I go here? I was like, no, you cannot go there. You're going to get trapped. You're going to get flooded in. You need to go to this person's house, take the dogs, take all of our documents. And I think it was Monday. I looked at my husband and said, you're not going to the state. You're not working this week. Like, there's no way you're going to be at work. And I went and got water. I got food, got gas. And what was interesting was I had all of those things at my home and then they all got flooded out. So piece of advice, if you're worried about storm surge, when you buy 5 gas tanks of gas, you have to put it very high because now all my gas tanks have half river water in them and they were useless. My husband, thankfully, he's like, what else do we need from our home? Like, what do we really need? He grabbed our documents, both of our father's ashes, and he hung our favorite painting like to the ceiling. And I was like, I don't know, just hang that to the ceiling and hope for the best. And that was the only thing. That was really the only material item that I wanted. And because I really wasn't worried. The wind was pretty powerful where I lived, but I really wasn't worried about our roof coming off. But and we prepared. We have a boat lift. We live on the canal, so we prepared our. It was funny because about a year ago, I was talking to someone about how do you prepare your boat on a lift for a hurricane. He said, okay, we'll strap it down and then ratchet it to the lifts and then lift it up as high as it can go. I said, okay. And that's what we did. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what happens if the water comes up as far as it can go? Is it going to float away? And I said, well, if the water's that high, you have much bigger problems. And that is what happened. That water came that high, and I do have much bigger problems than that. But when I saw my home, I really was elated a little bit because it was still standing, and I realized a lot of it was salvageable. And I was like, okay, it's still there. We can fix this. And a lot of my neighbors had no idea because they didn't have power, had no idea what happened to Fort Myers Beach. And I was like, guys, you don't even know. Like, we are so happy. I'm so happy that my house is still standing. This is going to be a mess. This is horrible. We lost a lot of things, but you guys haven't seen the images yet. And they're like, what happened? And I had to explain to them what I've seen. And they were like, wow, we are lucky, aren't we? Yeah. I'm like, yeah. So, and it's, my whole neighborhood's in the same boat. We all gutted everything, 3 feet of water. And then that to me is a lot. And then I realized every home and neighborhood from my house all the way, and I'm just east or just west of 75, all the way to the river, all the way to the beach, is in the same boat. All of us, if not worse. So I tried to prepare. And at the end of the day, there was nothing I could do to save that water from coming in. But I made sure my husband wasn't there. I told him to evacuate, because we were in an evacuation zone.
Yeah, what an experience to live through. I'm always so interested by the things that people choose to carry in those moments, the things that you choose to save. And those things that you were talking about, that you were pulling together resources and preparing. when push came to shove, what was it that was really important? And you can think of a couple things. We think we need so many things in life.
Yeah.
But when these events happen to us, it's really those handful of, you know what I really, really care about is this stuff. And in a way, it can reinforce for you, what really counts, what really matters. I think it is so interesting too. Thank you for sharing that you had prepared. And then you said, well, even though I knew this could be a worst case scenario and I had all this forecast information at my fingertips, I still suffered these consequences. I didn't have stuff that was as high up as it needed to be to survive the river water.
Yeah.
And that is important, I think, to tell people that that's what this is like. We're all sort of stumbling forward through this sometimes.
Yeah.
And, your reflections are as important as anybody else's. This is a very human enterprise. None of us are perfect. We're all figuring out how to do this as time goes on. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's definitely, when you see all of your stuff, I mean, it just looks ridiculous. I mean, everybody's stuff is on the corner, and you're right. You really think to yourself, what is really important to me? What do I really need? And I never want to go through this again. I hope this type of water never enters my home, but it's kind of a good cleansing of your soul, and things are just things, and what is important to you. And the painting that I really wanted to save is from a friend's father, and that's why it was so dear to me. So I just think it is interesting, and when you go, everyone has different things that are important to them, and do you take those things and leave? I saw my neighbors, they loaded up their trailer and hightailed it out of here. I didn't see them for a couple of days. I'm like, yeah, we left, and the rest of this is just things. We're alive. We're okay.
Allison, I wanted to shift and ask a moment about insurance. I hear the insurance situation in Florida is dire.
Yeah.
And I fear that there's a low percentage of, uptake on flood insurance in the heavily flooded areas. Is that true or not true? Please, I would love to hear that it's not.
So I'm very concerned. Obviously, I have to have a disclaimer that I'm not an insurance expert. I know that before the storm came, we were doing a lot of stories, a lot of investigative stories on people just having their homeowners dropped. So that was very significant. Flood insurance is, I don't know where it is outside of Florida, but for us, if you're in a flood zone and you finance your home, you're required to have flood insurance. If you own your home outright and you're in a flood zone, it's optional. And unfortunately, with a lot of the demographics of this area, a lot of people owning their homes for over 30 years, I don't know what the numbers are of people that don't have flood insurance. And I know at least one of my neighbors did not. So homeowners insurance was already hard to come by already. Thankfully, I know mine was still in place, but what's going to happen after this? Who knows? I mean, are they going to say, sorry, you are, because my home is below, if I were to bulldoze my home and rebuild it, I have to go up, 8-9 feet from where I am now. I don't know the exact number, but it's I would have to increase my elevation, and I'm not going to bulldoze my house. So I'm just going to rebuild it or, fix it. Are they going to say, sorry, you're below the elevation, we're not going to insure your home? I don't know. I have no idea how the insurance is going to work in the future. I'm not an insurance expert, but I'm very concerned that we're going to run in a place where it's very hard to get. And 2, it becomes extremely expensive. It has to be expensive. How can it not be extremely expensive going forward? This is going to be so many people are filing claims right now. It's very concerning, and we'll have to see how the stories pan out, because I think at this time we're still in the claim process. No one has any idea how much we're getting back at this point. I just have submitted claims. I have no idea what it's going to look like on the other end of it.
And your point about insurance premiums going up from the companies that will write new policies.
Yeah.
For this. I mean, you've got people in that market that have probably purchased homes in the last 5 years that are already at the limit of what they can pay with principal, interest, and what's held back in escrow. So this could be just economically crippling to people that are struggling to make a house payment.
It's really going to be interesting to see. I mean, we just had an influx of people move to Florida ever since COVID. I mean, everyone has moved here. It's not like the whole world moved to Florida. So houses have just been going. And are these people going to stay? I mean, they just moved here. Are they committed to living here? Are they going to rebuild? Are they going to get out of here? Or is this everyone's going to stay and fight for some type of any company that will insure them?
Let me follow that up with a question about the new residents. As you said, a bunch of people have moved pretty much anywhere in Florida, your area too. What was their pre-storm preparation? I'm sure you knew, you've heard anecdotally, did people kind of want to stay to see what it's all about? Did they just get really scared and think about leaving faster than people that had recent experience with past storms that have been there for a while?
I think, I don't know. Obviously, it'd be interesting to know some hard numbers on that. I think anecdotally, I've heard a lot of people that just moved here being like, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm out of here. But you also have to think about a lot of the people that just moved here have the means to get out of here. This is a lot of second homes for a lot of people, third homes. So they were thinking, okay, why would I come down to Florida? I'm just going to stay in my home in New Jersey. I think that more people were inclined. I think people that are born and raised here and have lived here their whole life, I think they're more inclined to stay. I think people that went through Irma, I bet it's probably split. I think a lot of people are like, hey, you said it was going to be bad and it wasn't as bad as you said, probably stayed. But then there was also the people that they said, even after Irma, it wasn't as bad as maybe it could have been for a lot of areas. They didn't have power for 2 weeks. And they're like, I'm not going through that again. I'm out of here. And that's what we're running into now. Not only was it really bad, a lot of people still don't have power. So I don't know. I don't know if they do studies on that of like who left, who went, but I think it's a mixture of both. But I know a lot of my neighbors stayed, and a lot of them had lived here for more than 20 years.
That's an interesting point, James, Oki James, that there were different kinds of populations doing different things. What I'm seeing in the fatalities for the people who weren't native to the area, these are actually also some of our younger fatalities. It's people who were visiting, like vacationing, and people who were in for work. And for various reasons, the work didn't stop. There was this great op-ed that Kara Cutie and Rebecca Morse wrote, and I don't remember what publication it was put in, which journal, newspaper, but they commented about how so many of the processes that go on in evacuation take time. So even just the information you need to make an informed decision takes time to get. It takes time for you to find what evacuation zone you are in, if there is an order. And most people really only seek that if they're in like a you must evacuate kind of order, not a gentle suggestion evacuation order. So a lot of this was about just not enough of the works from people's workplaces and schools and everything was lining up to get people to a place where they were making evacuation decision making. And you see that in these stories of the younger people, the people who were from out of town who perished. They just didn't have any idea what was going on until maybe Tuesday night or Wednesday morning.
Yeah, you make a great point.
Go
I mean,
ahead.
there's two sides of that. You make such a great point because, we sit here and harp like, know your evacuation zone, know your evacuation zone. And we're not even mentioning people that don't live here, that are just here. How would they know? And I think some people say, oh, I'm from out of town. I've never seen a hurricane. I'll stay. But then you're right. There's also the people that have no idea what's headed their way. They're not tuned into the local news. They just arrived. They're here for vacation. And this is a vacation town. And the place that hit is a vacation area. You're totally right. And at that point, what do? Do we go up and down the road and with a megaphone and tell people to leave? I mean, that's probably the best scenario. And And that's scary for me to think about that, because I can imagine how many times have I been to another city and not paid attention. I'm off. I'm not going to pay attention to the weather. I think it was New Year's a couple of years ago. I was in Nashville and there was a tornado like that New Year's Day. And I wasn't paying attention to the weather at all. And I'm looking at my phone. Oh my gosh, we need to take shelter. That is such a good point of how to get the attention of people that are just here trying to enjoy Florida.
It's something we call in the social sciences situational vulnerability. So we think of vulnerability as just, people who have certain kind of housing, living in particular places or demographics, or you can become vulnerable because of the situation you're in, because you're in an unfamiliar geography. You're departed from your normal communication ecosystem, your friends, the TV stations you tune into, all of that. Yeah. And vacationers certainly fit under that bill. I really do think that it was very likely to have been a different situation for those folks if the evacuation order had been mandatory and earlier, because then you start to see a rippling effect where there are hotels that are closing, there are businesses that are closing. You're looking to a set of institution level responses that then guide individual decision making. We see this happen in Oklahoma when there are tornado outbreaks possible. Everything shuts down, and that opens the floodgates to people going out and doing things. We'll see things like counterflow traffic at rush hour happen 2 hours early. People pour out of the city and go home and hunker down so that by the time the storms have hit, they're all home. The only reason they can do that is because the whole of society acted in concert to make sure that they didn't have these other obligations, and everyone was able to make those choices. And so I think that the point made in the article was about how these things take some time, and there just was not the time. And that did not serve those people very well, I don't think.
I think that's why I think that I've always been so concerned about the Barrier Islands. Even if it's just 1, 2, 3 feet of storm surge, I would get off that island. If you have any type of emergency, no one's coming there. And I remember listening to podcasts of people that were trapped in their homes after Harvey, needing medical attention. And they were like, we'll come to you by boat. We're putting you on a list. Like, we'll get there when we can. And it just brought me to tears thinking, gosh, if I was a young, healthy person thinking, well, I'll be okay. I can be on the island for a little bit. You don't know. Anything could happen. And you're so vulnerable being on that Barrier Island. And that's why I think just hurricane watch, storm surge watch, I'd hightail it out of there. And maybe, there's not too many big hotels on that island. There's a lot of Airbnbs. There's a lot of homes. There's just a lot of little, mom and pop, kind of small hotels, motels. So it's not like the Marriott where they can there are those hotels there, but they're not plentiful. You can't just send a text message to all your guests and say, we're under evacuation order, you need to go. A lot of these are family owned businesses. How are they supposed to get in touch with all of their guests at that time?
Well, and being in hospitality is my day job. And I know Kim was seeing me getting ready there when these questions came up, because it's the responsibility of hospitality at every level to make sure those guests are taken care of. And we have to do it in our hotels with hurricanes and tornadoes. I was shocked at a story that I saw of a couple that was honeymooning at a major resort who wasn't following the weather, heard on Monday that it was going further north, wasn't paying attention. And the resort basically closed and they didn't know it. And I find that really, really hard to believe, but let's assume they're telling the truth. That's shocking. But I was really, to something you said, Allison, the VRBO people were absolutely freaking out on Facebook, and there was nobody to tell them what to do. And people were trying to help. And I think it's really critical that our Airbnb and VRBO hosts be like that little couple in Mena, Arkansas that I've told the story about 2 or 3 times this year. Of course, I know there's tornadoes expected the next morning in Arkansas, but they didn't know that. And, they immediately started briefing us on tornado procedures that night when we checked in. And, what they were going to do, when they were going to call us down, when we were going to go to the storm shelter. And I thought that's exactly what we all have to do. In hospitality. It is a wake up call, Kim. That is exactly right. And I think we got to bring that up. The hotels have a little more organized structure and should be doing a better job. But the vacation rentals really have a responsibility. I was watching you and that little old lady walked out of her house in Cape Coral, and I just almost started crying. What were you thinking when you saw that video, Allison, at the height of the storm?
The video, which one?
It was a little lady that walked out on the sidewalk, and she was either like cleaning up or something at the height of the storm, and this piece of sheet metal comes behind her. It just gave me chills.
You know what? That was really disheartening to see. So that's the thing. Like last week was such a blur that being reminded of all the little pieces people have said, oh, you said this, you said this. I'm like, wow, this is all coming back to my memory now. When I saw that, I thought, this is the beginning. This is just the beginning of what the storm is capable to do. It hurt my heart that for some reason she felt like it was that she didn't, maybe I didn't give her enough information to tell her this is not the time to go clean up. Just wait. And people send us videos, and sometimes I see them taking videos of them driving. I'm like, I don't need a video that bad. Please do not.
And you
get
said that on air, and I thought that was a really good message.
I don't need a video that bad. I'll much rather have you safe. I think that woman picking up and getting hit by that, it hurt my heart, but I knew it was just that storm was just getting started, and it was just so mean. It was such a mean storm. And I just knew that more was going to come. I just don't know how to get more messaging out. I try to go talk to people about storm safety. And I feel like I need to totally rework my PowerPoint slide of, you think about people that were trapped on Fort Myers Beach. And sometimes you think, I always have in my hurricane kit, grab a whistle, something that people could hear you if you are trapped. And people think, oh, that's so dire to think about. Now I'm going to tell people to make sure you have a bike helmet and a life jacket ready to go and a whistle, because you might have to be floating and you don't want to hit your head and you don't know where you're going to end up, but you need to make sure you're above water. And I just need to, I think my messaging needs to be more clear of how to stay safe. Don't go out in the storms. It's just, I don't know what she was thinking. I don't know why she felt like she needed to go pick up debris.
It was heartbreaking. It was just probably one of the hardest things I had to watch. On Wink, I watched 3 kids get out on the Naples Pier at the height of the storm. It was on some cam. And I thought, this pier is going to collapse into the ocean with these kids on it. And I was just, again, heartbroken to see that.
Yeah, I remember walking in and seeing us that video. I think we share that camera. That's just the Naples Pier camera. It's on EarthCam. So everyone had access to it. I saw those kids and I thought, we need to not show that video. We need to not show that camera, because I don't want to air someone's death, and we can't show it. We can't even show people that this is okay to go out and quote unquote enjoy a storm. There's no enjoying here. Even sometimes you see people go out and, we don't get a lot of waves here in Southwest Florida. Sometimes surfers try to go out and see what they can do or whatever. And I feel like even the surfers are like, no way, I'm not going there.
That's right. Your reporter, Kyla Gayer, has a fabulous, not fabulous, that's not the right thing, a very heartrending story about Lori Fisk in Fort Myers Beach. And it's my pick of the week tonight. She lived in the basement apartment of a 2-story home on Fort Myers Beach worked in the restaurant and had lived there for 25 years. And they all decided to stay. And it's a very, very moving story. I do note that she said she didn't think the evacuation recommendations came early enough. She said that point blank on the air. But one of the 4 members in their little group lost her life. And
It's
that
horrible.
the life jacket advice, you don't want to put him in that situation, obviously. We hope they don't get into that. But that it's just a heartbreaking story, and she tells it so movingly. I'd love to have her on the show sometime, because she's our anecdotal evidence, Kim. She's that person that decided to stay, and she's very frank about it. And I thought that report by Kyla was fabulous, by the way.
Yeah, she does a great job, and that was an emotional story. And hearing her tell about, to witness being with somebody and then not being with them in a few hours is just the ultimate devastation. I mean, no one wants, I can't imagine a worse thing. And then to tell it to somebody, I get weary sometimes of the stories that we tell about survival. They're good stories and I think her story is really important, because sometimes we tell stories of, I rode up the storm and this happened. And then it's like the story of success almost. And I'm very happy that person made it through the storm and found them ways of how to stay alive. But to tell the story that, hey, I survived, but my friend didn't, I think that should really sink into people of, yeah, there are stories of survival. And guess what? Someone's telling the story, because you don't hear the stories of unsurvival. They're not there to tell the story. They passed away. But for someone to say, I survived and my friend did not, that story means so much more than any other story. Absolutely.
Well, and there was a story, I think, in the Tampa Bay Times, because Kim had us all looking at anecdotal stories. And, this story was about, I think it was an 82-year-old man and his wife. They were big Bears fans. They had Mike Ditka's autograph, and they decided to stay. And, she survived. He passed away. They found him 150 yards away. And she said afterwards, we were so worried about losing the house. She said, but I lost the house anyway, and now I've lost him. If I hadn't lost him, at least I would still have that. And
right.
I thought that was a very, very moving story too.
Yeah. I mean, some people say, I want to keep my eyes on the house. I want to know what's going on with the house. I get that. I'm a homeowner too. I wanted to know what happened to my home, but I'd much rather have my husband by my side. Absolutely. And it's heart-wrenching. It's easy to say, like, oh, a house is a house to someone. It's easy to say. And then you talk to someone that lost their entire house. They're going to say, you don't know what you're talking about. And I understand that pain and that emotion, and it's not easy. And I'm not saying that, trying to make your pain and your loss any better, but life is everything. I mean, that's everything. There are going to be things in that house you can't replace, like pictures and memorabilia and your favorite materialistic thing or whatever it is. But life is, you only get one. That's it. And that's our goal. My goal on TV is to save your house. I can't. Mother Nature's going to do what it's going to do. My goal is to help you make a decision for your life. And that's all we can do. We can't stop the storm. We can't stop it from ruining businesses, homes. I mean, the video of the storm surge coming up on those people's windows is so moving, because it's just waves breaking on them. But then I get mad. I'm like, why do I have video of this? I don't even want to know that someone was there to take video of this. But I just couldn't imagine looking out on a second story building and just seeing nothing but water.
And were you shocked when you saw Ali Velsh's feed from Naples? at the amount of flooding that was going on there at that time, because y'all carried that feed live for a little while.
Yeah, because that was really the only images we really had at the time. And that was devastating. And seeing cars being floated and flipped over, that was really impactful and to show the power of water. And we had yet to know what was going on in Fort Myers Beach. So that was the only video we had for a long time. And then when we started getting phone calls from people on Fort Myers Beach of showing us the waves coming up on the second story, that was, I kind of got, I had to step away a couple of times. You know, there were points when the weather's over, the forecasting is over, the storm is here. And you have to step away, and sometimes you're like, what is this going to look like in the morning? Yeah, I really sometimes keep thinking about how there's been so many bad storms, and how this finally happened to where I live and my home and my town that I forecast for. And it's definitely hard to piece together.
I'll make a quick comment and then pass this back over to Bill. All of those videos you were talking about, watching the water pile up on windows and then watching windows break, that's the first time it really sank in for me that the water that people were navigating, it's not just going to be water, even water moving quickly in waves, which itself is terrifying. It's the force, but it's carrying all the debris, like what we talked about with tornadoes. You know, you see those images of pencils driven into telephone poles, and that's going to happen with this, just with water that has more force even than air, pushing it up against you. So you've got water that has broken glass, that has boards with nails in it. Like, this is not stuff you want to be swimming in, especially when it's up in your house. It's going to have all the debris of your house in an enclosed area. And that's something that could be discussed. I think people see these, you know, maybe see these videos and hear these stories of people surviving by swimming and stuff, but man, it can take on a different connotation when you make the point that, you know, they're navigating a big old pile of tetanus, and just things that could dismember you in the water if you're even so lucky as to not drown in it. Like that, there's a lot going on there.
And the chemicals.
And the chemicals.
Yard chemicals, gasoline. It's awful.
Yeah, there's a reason those rescue swimmers decontaminate when they get out of the situation.
I mean, that's your last resort. Either you drown or you try to survive those waters. And some people were saying, you know, the waters were so bad with the waves coming in. It came in fast and strong with those waves. And one fellow that stayed and made it because he was young and able to swim, you have a certain amount of time to find another place to be before that water goes shooting back out. And he's like, the water going back out was so forceful. He said it was more forceful than the water coming in, and just seeing all the debris going back out. He's, you know, you have to make those decisions fast. You better get to someplace safe before you are back out in the Gulf of Mexico. It is just so scary. I mean, you can't hide from that water. You can duck and cover and hope for the best, but water is not, you're going with it.
Yeah, run from the water, hide from the wind, right?
Yeah.
I was always, as a young person, moved by the account from Hurricane Camille, and Troy will remember this, of Mary Ann Gerlach. And she said, you know, when it was over, dark, she didn't know if she was out in the Gulf of Mexico, you know, or she was a mile inland. She didn't know where she was going to land. So I know that next time I'm going to go back and dig up all these stories, and I'm just going to tell these stories, because Hurricane Audrey, Camille, all these years, you know, those are ancient stories, but it's still real when you're climbing around trying to find a roof to climb on top of, and, you know, getting pelted by boards and whatever. There was even a Florida garfish stuck in a fence somewhere in Fort Myers.
All that.
You know, there's no telling what else is swimming in that water that I don't want to, especially snakes in a lot of places, you know, I don't want to know about that. So one of our loyal listeners, and with the email officer's permission, I'm going to read a couple of things out of it, Jen, if that's okay. Skip Regney is a retired oceanographer, and his ears really picked up last Monday night when we were talking about Charlotte Harbor. And I wondered aloud, Allison, after Charlie and this storm, was it really possible to get a bad storm surge in there? And he said, oh, no, wait a minute. Absolutely it is. His parents lived in Punta Gorda. And he pointed out a paper Bob Weisberg did that said, the three reasons you didn't have storm surge in Charlie were small radius of winds, the rapid forward speed, and the center track over instead of north of Charlotte Harbor. And he said in that, the author says, we caution that Charlotte Harbor region is highly susceptible to storm surge. And when I looked at that Sierra map today, I realized that if that eye had been, as he says, 15 to 30 miles north of Boca Grande Pass and Inglewood or Venice, it could have been a different story in Punta Gorda or Charlotte Harbor. With
Absolutely.
This
Absolutely.
So we don't want those people living there thinking again they're living a charmed life. He had a story about his parents. 82-year-old dad would not leave for anything, no matter what they did. And their entire story was, I want to be here. I want to know what happens. And he says he's afraid they're still gonna do that. I don't know. He said, I don't do flood zones. So I'm with him. I don't do flood zones.
I think that goes with our messaging of, and with Florida just being a north-south peninsula, 10, 20 miles makes all the difference of who sees that storm surge. And my messaging was at least I thought I was trying to be clear. If someone's going to get a lot of rain, someone's going to get the wind, and someone's going to get the storm surge. And it's depending on where the storm makes landfall. Like, if the storm would have moved to the north, Charlotte Harbor would have a ton more storm surge. The Caloosahatchee it wouldn't have probably gone so far up the Caloosahatchee if it made more of a impact in Charlotte Harbor. So, again, I don't want someone in Charlotte County saying, well, you said the storm surge was going to be bad here and we just had some winds and I'm not going to leave next time. Well, do you want to base that off of 25 miles that's under the margin of error within the track of the National Hurricane Center? Like, these forecasts are spot on, but they're not perfect. And 25 miles in Florida makes a lot more of a difference, I think, than in many places in America.
I have a really quick follow-up on that. I mean, one of the things that's so interesting about the map that is put out, the surge forecast that is put out, is it's kind of one slice of the future. It's the worst case scenario. Do you think that some people were thinking about that, though, that, hey, maybe it won't hit me if it goes this little bit up and down the coast? One of the points that you're making here is there are a lot of people who are going to get at least some really decent surge. Is it possible that it might be nice for us to think about doing something like we do with snowfall, where you kind of have like a boom bust scenario where people could see, hey, even if the best thing happens for you and this thing goes north, you're still in line for this much surge, like something that could help to reinforce the story that surge was going to be a part of this for your area one way or the other, and help to sync that message.
Yeah, I think and I think I remember last week you mentioned, you're giving people all of these parts and you're just expecting them to make a car. And I think that's a really good analogy. I think it's going to take a lot of slow messaging of, you're right, like sometimes on a newscast, when the storm's not ready to be here, I have 4 minutes, maybe 5, if I ask nicely, because the storm's coming. I'm like, okay, this is this and this. And I don't sit there and play out every single scenario. Like, okay, if it goes here, then this is going to happen. If it goes here, then this is going to happen. One, because by the time it gets here, it might be totally different. And I try to do that. Like, okay, if it's going to go on this side of the cone, these are the impacts we could see along the coast. If it goes over here, these are the impacts we can see. What I try to tell people is look at the highest number on the map and prepare for it. If you see 28 inches of rain but your town has 4, prepare for 28, because guess what? Northport and Cape Coral I don't know, as the crow flies, maybe 30 miles, 50 miles. So like not even that much. So that's still within that margin of error. If you see a wind speed of 120, but for your neighborhood, it has 50, I prepare for the other one. It's just the forecast can change, and you need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. It sounds so cliche, but you do.
I have a comment question. My focus during Ian, I didn't have any radio stations in that, but I was watching for a coworker who was in south of Sarasota. So it was from that area down toward Inglewood, kind of watching for how things were going to play out. And for her, she ended up with in that core of 20 inches of rain. And she was able to actually get a text to me and said, what's the direction of the wind? There was one phone that was working. And I said, it's a northwest wind. And she goes, if we get a west wind, all this my street is flooded. All the water's coming in. And so it was a northwest wind all night. And it was so scary to sit here and wonder, I hope that wind doesn't shift, And so there's so many facets going on here, from the surge to that core of the 20 inches plus. I don't know if you guys talked about it last week, but one thing that I talked with Sally was, as this was coming inland, usually, it's the east side, the right quadrant is the strongest typically, but the west side did not erode. It stayed strong. Have we discussed what was going on there meteorologically that kept that going? It did not erode away at all, and that really enhanced the amount of flooding that occurred, especially in some of those areas, and kept the surge going longer as well.
Yeah, that west side was so powerful, and it had a lot of rain with it as well. And the only thing I could think of just in that exact moment of nowcasting was it wasn't making landfall over land. It was making landfall over barrier islands and Estero Bay and the Caloosahatchee. There was still a lot of warm water just kind of sitting there ready to keep feeding someone into the storm. It wasn't, when Irma made landfall in Marco, one, it had some dry air entrained in it on the west side. There was no dry air on the west side of that storm. But also, once it made landfall in South Florida, it was straight over land. There was not any other body of water.
Well, Allison, we're lucky that we have James from Alabama, his voice back tonight. He always asks the hard questions.
Oh, geez.
Oh, please.
When I worked in Montgomery, I watched a lot of James Spann. So
I have one more that may morph into two, but I saw where a former OCM at the Weather Channel came out this week and said that the Weather Channel is doing a disservice by putting reporters out in the storm. I remember Stephanie Abrams in Mexico Beach on the morning of Michael, and I thought her message that landfall day was powerful, that it was unsafe to stay there. And that really resonated with me. Comment on that. I saw some immediate response from some of our friends who said, no, it's really important when Jim Cantore shows up in your neighborhood that it's serious. So maybe they don't need to send him out, but for the dangerous storms. But he even nearly got hit by debris in Punta Gorda.
And
so talk about that for a minute, how y'all handle it, and what your thoughts are on that.
I could not agree more that I don't think it's necessary to put reporters out in the field. We have enough weather cameras. We have enough trail cams. We have enough things that we can post before that storm. There's a weather chaser that mounted some, I forget his name. I think his last name is Olson. He posted some cameras on top of some poles in Fort Myers Beach, and he has a great time lapse. He wasn't there, but Max Olson, thank you. He had some great video of that storm surge and how powerful it was. So I do think, as far as our station is concerned, no reporter, photographer, anybody was out there after 9 o'clock on Wednesday. By Wednesday morning, no one was in the field. It's not safe. There was another TV station that was trying to come back from Fort Myers Beach, and I've seen their car crushed with a boat. I don't think it's necessary to be out there. I think we can tell the story without people getting hit by debris. And I also think that maybe when the Weather Channel does show up, it's like, the question for me is it what you're saying, that, okay, Jim Cantori's here, it's real? Or is it add into that spectator sport? Like, oh, we should watch, like, what's going to happen? I don't know the answer to that. And obviously maybe Kim would know more on that social sciences, but I don't think that putting people in harm's way is benefiting anybody. I mean, we know what it looks like to be hit with wind. You stand there, your cheeks flap, and you can't stand. Let's all be safe and go somewhere else.
So Allison, if you could go back and do this whole thing over again, going back 5 days before this happened, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
Trust my gut a little bit more. Sunday night, I had such a bad feeling, but 3 days out, you're still kind of hedging that, okay, could this be going to Tampa? And this is just a storm surge event for some part of our viewing area, not as devastating and catastrophic as it was. I wish I would have taken the risk to be more aggressive and risk getting all the mean emails that I don't know what I'm talking about and I was wrong. I much would have been like screaming, hey, you guys, I know there's not evacuations, but you need to go. I wish I was. People tell me, I mean, again, I don't really remember a lot of the week. People say you were very clear, specifically Monday. My coworker, my colleague, Rob Duns and I, they're like, you guys were pretty adamant that you were concerned and nervous, and not nervous, but concerned for our community, that they need to take action. And so people said that I did it, but I think in my head, there's just a little bit of guilt that I could have done maybe a little bit more, been more aggressive, been more trusting of my gut.
So let's say we have another one just like this in 10 years. And of course, I don't know if you're going to stay there 10 years, but let's assume that you are, and you know that in 10 years, you're going to have another one. What are you going to start doing differently to get people ready for that one in 10 years in terms of your on-air presence, your speaking, your social media? What will you do now to get people ready for the next one after going through this?
Well, I think that I've always done a lot of community outreach of talking to people about, okay, this is how you prepare for hurricanes, especially people that just moved here and don't know what's about hurricanes. There needs to be more of that. There needs to be more of an outreach. There needs to be more of an outreach to people in their 20s and their 30s that are not tuning into local TV. I had a best friend that said, why aren't you coming to my party on Sunday? I said, because there's a hurricane coming and I can't come. And she said, oh, I had no idea. There needs to be somehow, we need to communicate messaging to people that are not tuned into the TV as well. Maybe that's social media. Maybe that's, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but there needs to be more clear. This is a life or death scenario. This is not a snow day, and I think
most people don't use television that are your age or younger. Mm-hmm. And that's my next question to you is, how do you reach them? And the next question is, it's obviously social. Are you on TikTok?
Yeah. And that's the thing. People say, why aren't you on TikTok? And I've had this, so I'm in my upper 30s. So I'm like this, I won't go on TikTok because I won't, I have this kind of air that I think I shouldn't do it. But now I'm thinking maybe I should do it. That's the only way I'm going to reach these people. And what's more frustrating is whoever is on TikTok giving weather information, it sure is not someone from my team. It's sure not someone of a credible source. So what information are they getting from this TikTok person? So there needs to be someone credible with an actual forecast, with actual knowledgeable information to give information to TikTok. So maybe maybe I have to sign up, James.
Well, here's the deal. I've said this on this show before. When I watch TikTok, they're doing one of three things: they're dancing, they're funny, or they're cussing. One of the three. I mean, and I'm not a dancer, and I'm not a cusser really, unless it's really bad. And I'm not funny. I mean, I know funny. I'm not funny, but my job, I was born for some reason to mitigate loss of life here when there are tornadoes flying. Mm-hmm. And that's for every single demographic set, whether it's a 16-year-old or a 90-year-old. And the only way, to think that some 17-year-old is going to watch the news at 10 o'clock tonight, they're not going to watch this. This is not relevant. It will never be. Absolutely. And that's where they live. And that's the reason I'm over there. And I don't dance. I don't cuss. I don't do jokes. I just shoot straight. And I will say that there is a cesspool of horrible information from people that are all over these platforms, and they're in it writing the algorithms using fear to make big money. I mean, big money. And some of the weather entertainers do it right. I'm not saying they're all bad, but I just think that we have to be there, going forward to reach these people. So let's say you go talk to some third graders in a school, and I know we got to take a break here, but you talk to some third graders in a school. What differently will you do for them, third or fourth graders, when you go see them after this?
That's a good question. I'll have to really kind of think back. I was already because all my school supplies that I typically do are ruined. So I have to come up with a new school supply list anyway. I usually would teach about how hail is still possible in Florida, how, I would teach people about storm surge. I would give this demonstration of how on the east coast of Florida, it's a bowl of water. We're like a plate of water. And I'd have kids, walk and see how the plate of water spilled a lot faster. And that's what we're like here in Southwest Florida. So I need to change the messaging a little bit more, like what is a watch, what is a warning, and try to make them understand what these terms are and what they mean. And, if a storm surge watch is issued for your town, what does that mean? What evacuation zone are you in? Are you in a flood zone? What does a flood zone mean? I think I'm going to kind of change it from weather knowledge and how weather works to safety. And I think that's something I'll have to rework. And if James, you're on TikTok, I think that means I have to get on TikTok.
Yeah, no. You got to get on the talk. I mean,
so James, what do you do when you're talking to kids in a community that's been traumatized by a tornado?
Well, because
I'm sure they want to talk. Probably. Do you engage them, or what do you do?
The first thing I did after a big tornado day, I go see a professional counselor that understands what they need to see and what they need to hear. You can show them graphic images that will scare them to death, give them trauma by watching this. And I don't want to do that. But at the same time, you want to give them something that's forceful. And kids are different now. They live in a video world. They don't, do puppets. They're used to seeing hard video. And so I went to see a counselor and say, all right, help me. And once I get that information from the counselor, then I load everything up. And that is the key thing too, is that you need to listen, and you need to allocate some time at the end, because they all want to talk and they want to share stories. And it's important for me to listen to them, and really, because I can learn from them. But I'm not qualified. My background is engineering and meteorology. I have no qualifications to determine what a 10-year-old needs to see after a graphic tornado day that killed a bunch of people there. But I will say this, and I'll stop here because I know we've got to go. One of the things that I have learned, the greatest resources I have, the survivors of the people that died. And Allison, I know you've got over 100. How many people have died there? What's the death toll?
So in Lee County, I think we're up to about 60 or so, but there's still hundreds unaccounted for. And that could mean they're at a shelter, and that could mean they evacuated and haven't got in touch with their loved ones yet. But it's approaching 100 officially, which I'm sure it will go higher.
Right. And what I did, I didn't do anything for 6 months. Like after 2011, I didn't talk about it. I didn't do anything. But after 6 months, I started to immerse myself in the lives of the survivors of those people that died. And those people, almost all of them, want to help. And for me, James Spann's a bag of hot air, blah, blah, blah. This knucklehead's on television yakking away. The guy says the same thing. Nobody listens to him. But when these people talk, everybody listens. And I was going to share one quick story. This is one of the survivors of the outbreak on April 27, 2011. I got this note from Ashley Mims, and this was the day of a big tornado event here. It looked like it was going to be a big tornado day. And Ashley sent me a note, and she said, "Hey, I'm Lauren Brown's mom." Lauren Brown was one of the ones killed April 27, 2011. She was a student. And it goes on to say, today is Lauren's birthday, of all days to have bad weather. But if people just don't forget the faces like hers that we lost, then maybe they will take this seriously. And I said, Ashley, would you mind if I shared this? And she said, please do. She wanted me to. And I honestly think that made a big difference, because we had an EF3 tornado that night that came through a college town, a town called Jacksonville, not Florida, but Jacksonville, Alabama. And it could have killed a lot of people and nobody died. And I honestly think that her message that day was one of the reasons we did not have loss of life. And so, I just think that, as they allow you to do that, immersing yourselves in the lives of those families, it's good for you and it's good for them. But again, I gave it 6 months, because these people need to grieve. They don't need some TV person, lurking around here. But I will agree with what Rick Smith said, is that it's important to talk this out, because this all happened on your watch, and you'll be thinking about this a lot. And have you processed it at all? Allison, have you had a chance to process any of this?
I think I have sometimes, and then sometimes I realize I don't think I have. I went down, the National Weather Service was in town. I'm losing track of days, but last week I went down to see, they were doing some of the survey damage on Fort Myers Beach, and I had not been down to Fort Myers Beach. And I wasn't allowed on the beach. We were on the road, like right before, kind of behind the bay. And I ran into a lot of people that just lost everything. They lost their home, they lost their business. And I was kind of processing my own thing of dealing with my home. And then when I saw them dealing with what they had to deal with, I was like, I don't even need to process it, because I'm doing okay relative to these people. So then I would put my processing on the back burner, thinking, get over yourself. Other people lost everything. You'll be fine. Just keep moving forward. But I know that I do have to process. So I guess the answer is no, I have not at all.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I have not processed April 27, 2011. That happened 11 years ago. I have not processed that day yet. So just give yourself some time and some space. And, I went through every emotion of grief, and I think you're going to have to do that. And that's hard, because you've got to go through anger and you've got to go through depression. You don't have to, but for me, I had to, anger and depression and guilt and all these things. And finally you're done with it, and you roll up your sleeves and you go to work. But it took me about 6 months. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to somebody, and just understand that your work is greatly appreciated. Now, you said you had to leave at 9:30. It's 9:51.
What time is it?
9:51.
So I couldn't. I have a bet. We're on different times. I'm on Eastern.
Okay.
So
okay.
Well, we got 45 more minutes, Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So cool. So don't go away yet. We have to pause here for Tony Rice. And then we're going to hear from Jen this week in tornado history. And we're going to come back with picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
There will be a lunar occultation of the planet Uranus on Wednesday morning, visible from the western United States and upper Midwest. Occultations occur when one celestial body passes in front of another, blocking it from view from a few minutes to a few seconds, depending on the distance. Uranus is 1.7 billion miles away, and very dim as a result. The moon, it's only a few days past full, so it's pretty bright. That means this is going to require at least a moderate-sized telescope to view. But this is also something that happens only a few times a year, and Most astrophotographers, they tend to have things like this marked on their calendars. So look out for images after the event. Like solar eclipses, which are also technically occultations, when and what this event looks like varies widely by your location. Here in the US, it's only going to be visible from points north and west of a line that extends from the Baja Peninsula to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Even then, the view will be very different from, say, Minneapolis to Seattle to San Diego. When viewed from Seattle, Uranus will pass behind the full diameter of the moon, hiding it for a full hour beginning at 10:05 p.m. Pacific. While in Minneapolis, it'll disappear near the moon's south pole at 12:36 a.m. Central, reemerging less than 30 minutes later at about the southeastern point. Observing occultations do also have a scientific purpose. Through the years they've been used to refine calculations of the size of the sun and moon, astrophotographers use the light shining from the planet to highlight lunar peaks and valleys during lunar occultations like this one. And it also provides a rare opportunity to better see distant moons as the brighter planet is blocked. Elsewhere in the sky, look for the moon to pass by Mars before you turn in on Friday evening. The pair will rise around 10 p.m. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, on October 10th, 1992, an F2 tornado moved a quick 2 miles through Columbus, Mississippi. For the storm data entry, the twister developed near the city limits on the northwest side of town and moved to the southeast. There were 16 injuries and no fatalities. 2 mobile homes were destroyed and 5 others sustained damage. 3 frame homes were demolished and 70 others were damaged, and over 30 businesses received some degree of damage. At the Mississippi University for Women, the tornado toppled the top of the historic clock tower at Callaway Hall. The quote, Old Maid's Gate at the front of the school was also destroyed. Just over 10 years later, the school was hit again by a stronger tornado. An F3 caused extensive damage to several buildings on campus on November 10th, 2002. Read more about this event and hundreds more at tornadotalk.com.
All right, time now to dig into the email inbox and just maybe there's something in there this week.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All righty. So I missed last week and I have a little pile of emails that have come in here. So I'll kind of group them together. But a couple of folks have sent some information from Ian Harvey Day. Thank you for the link to the free satellite maps from NOAA. And then Joey Amberson also sent some information on the Fort Myers storm surge as well. We also got some comments on, it looks like some YouTube advice. So I know that, James, we're still working on our new YouTube channel. Are we still transitioning some of the YouTubes from the previous your channel over? Or are we still working on that?
Yeah, we are. And we need somebody to take that over and to put better show notes and things like that. Yeah, it's a crappy job. It's a crappy YouTube job right now, but at least we have the URL and we'll get somebody to work on that. But yes, we have much work to do.
Yeah, we will definitely work on that.
See, we're like an audio show that's learning how to do video, we're still learning.
Exactly. We also, this was cool. This was back from September 13th. I just thought this was neat. I take that back. It's from September 19th. This was from someone who wrote from Estonia and had been experimenting with distant weather fax reception over shortwave radio. I thought this was cool and was able to receive a weather fax from Boston. And also so they actually shared it with us. I thought that was kind of cool here, but they live in Estonia and was able to get a weather fax.
That's the famous Tarmo.
Yeah,
yes,
Tarmo Tanelsu. Yes,
that's so
yes.
cool. I'd never seen that before, so that was neato. And
then
one more,
even has faxes is amazing to me.
I know, exactly. Then I'll read one more. This is from James Barkas, who had a comment from last week's show. Not really a question, but a bit of word of wisdom. I wrote this in the chat of the show. And the amount of dense information confuses the people. Keep the communication consistent and messaging takes care of itself. If there is a change, say so. It appears to me, reading social media myself, that tenured certified meteorologists have to fight the know-it-alls that just contradict what the trained experts say. If the source is not degreed, certified, or trained by a most reputable agency or company, I don't give them much credit. We, the viewers, must consider the source. And so that was actually, I know we talked about that just a few minutes ago, but it was, I think that is certainly a challenge that we all have, especially in the broadcasting, is when we got into this business, we didn't realize we wouldn't just be trying to fight the messaging, in one way, but we're actually having to fight other things, social media and content, and it's a battle. And how do we get heard? And so we appreciate that comment, Jim. So anywho, that's the email for tonight. If you have more suggestions or quips for us, and we will certainly get that on the air as much as we can, email at weatherbrains.com. And don't forget our newsletter. You might get something fun from me this week. In the newsletter that is a Thursday morning, gets right to your email. And if you go to our website, you can click on a little link and that will get you signed up for our newsletter.
Awesome. And real quick, I know that James A has to do television on Fox 23 in Tulsa. So James, what's your pick of the week? Go.
Pick of the week was, like Rick did last week, a late pinch hit from the state fire marshal in Florida. And it is a tweet basically cautioning people that all of these flooded electric vehicles and hybrids, when they start having corrosion, are going to present an enormous fire hazard.
Yep. Wow. All right.
And lithium
awesome.
batteries are no good when they're burning.
Yeah, they don't work well. All right, James, they have a great show. Thanks for your time as always. All right, so let's do picks of the week here. And we are running long here. We apologize, but this was such a good show. We just wanted to let it breathe a little bit here. So we're going to go around to everybody. And again, Troy, I know that you've got to bow out. Before you go, Troy, you got to pick for us real quick.
Yeah, I just had and this was followed up by Kim and everyone else. And also, we had Neil followed up with this as well. Some of the demographics material that we were getting, my pick was actually a CNN story, which we began to see the demographics of Ian and the effects in Florida. And I found that interesting, if not a little bit depressing, but it was interesting to see that. And so that's my pick of the week.
Awesome. Well, Troy, have a great week. And
thanks,
we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Alice.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Let's go to Rick Smith. Rick, what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is along the same lines. Story from the Tampa newspaper. Can't remember the name of it, but it's another one of these stories that kind of documents some of the people, the survivors, and the stories, the people that didn't survive. These are hard to read and not fun at all. But I think it's so important. And Jen and I have conversations about this, about these are not just numbers. These are not just, 103, 104, 105. These are people with lives and stories and families. So it's an account of some of that went on. So that's my pick.
Yeah, that's a great pick. And it's so motivating to me. It is very, very motivating. I mean, I don't sleep much. My days are long, but we've got work to do. We've all got work to do, whether it's mitigating loss of life in a hurricane, a tornado, winter storm, whatever. And for all of us, it just motivates me. And so it's a great, great pick. And Bill, I did get your note about a lightning round of questions for Allison. I'm going to let you do that at the end. Okay. So just hang tight. Let's go to Jen for her pick of the week. Jen, go.
Well, it has been 4 years since Hurricane Michael made landfall. And I mentioned 2 weeks ago that I'm a new fangirl of Mark Sudduth and Hurricane Track, and been still watching some of his videos that he puts out. And he put one out today on YouTube, a look back at Michael. And in that, he had another link. So I have actually two picks. He posted what he calls the Michael Project, and it's unedited video from Michael's landfall. And he had the camera set up at Mexico Beach, and he got it set up perfectly. And I just kind of skimmed through it today, and even just kind of going, a few hours, for right when it started to toward the end, there's no commentary, there's no music, there's no flash, there's no big thumbnail. It's just the raw power of surge and
wind, this death dealing barrage of just projectiles.
Yeah,
it is the most convincing, compelling video I've ever seen from a hurricane.
The sound, the howl of it, and it was right there near an Exxon station, and the Exxon station is obviously obliterated, and it's just watching it. It's very compelling, and I think some of the video has been used before for training videos and to try to help folks. So I think that needs to get out more and more. This is what you could be dealing with if you stay. And it was very powerful. And so those are my picks. It's hard to believe it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, wow. In my pick, it's an unedited drone video of the damage in Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel, and again, there's been so many great drone videos, but this is unedited, so it just really gives you a feel for what it's like, and I just like that one. So again, all these pics will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. All right, Kim, what you got? Go.
Mine is a sort of raw emotional take on what happened in Florida by Glenn Hurricane Schwartz, who had dedicated his life to helping these very areas prepare for the eventuality of a hurricane. He comments that in 1992, they were so much better prepared, he feels, than now in 2022, and just why. And so he kind of wrestles with those feelings. He highlights a couple of things in there that I think are tough realities, though, that we have to deal with. One, he sort of looks at the policymaker decision makers and just says, hey, you guys aren't qualified to make these choices. You are not science experts. Something that's really tough that we have to live with is it is their job to make these calls. And they're making these calls not just based on the threat information, but on things like politics. And it is so tough for us to watch. And I think we have to learn a whole lot more about what has gone on in this event. And there's a lot that I know that we don't know about the decisions that were made. And just, unfortunately, it is their job. And so it's important for us to include them and reach out to them and be very intentional about that. And then I have a second pick, which is sort of about, okay, how do you pick yourself back up and go forward after mistakes are made? And it's something that I think could be good for anyone to read who is a meteorologist who maybe has regrets, who's gone through these events, but also for us to think about how we can approach others who maybe made regrettable choices so that we can all move forward and do better in the future.
Great picks. All right, Bill Murray, go. You do your lightning round, and then after that, both of you can do your picks of the week.
All right, Allison, where were you for Michael? Do you have a story from 4 years ago today that you can share?
I went up to cover it for my storm for my station. When I left, it was supposed to be a Category 3. Of course, it was a Category 5. We stayed at the Red Roof Inn, which was a no roof inn by the end of the storm. It was, and we weren't even near Mexico Beach. I woke up the next day and I found a stray dog that I actually ended up taking home. And we saw the devastation. It was terrible. And we couldn't even make it down to Fort Myers Beach. We had to make an executive decision because if we would have gone down there, we don't think we would have ever gotten back out based on flat tires, gas. So it was either stay there for a week or hit the road and head back home. And so I was there, watched the storm come on through. Driving home, noticing, we had to drive north to get on I-10, noticing the damage as far inland as it was really impactful to me. And that's kind of goes what I was saying before, these storms have happened to other communities. And I was, kind of hit by it then. And then to realize that happened to my town, it really hurt. But that's where I was there. I was there for the storm.
It was a powerful day for sure. I heard that an elected official said something to the effect that they always warn us, and 9 out of 10 times it doesn't happen. Ian was the 10%. Did someone talk to that person and counsel them, or do they care?
I don't know. I mean, what's interesting is, you hear some people say, well, in the media, they were saying this and this and this. And it's, when it comes down to the evacuation orders, the media is not in that room. You're getting your information from the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service, and they were very clear what the forecast was. So I don't know who talked to who, but you have to prepare for the 10%. You have to prepare for the 10% worst case scenario. If there's a 10%, that's the whole. Prepare for the worst number on the screen. You have to, or else you're just unprepared.
I heard one of the anchors say early that morning that the NHC guys are experts, great at what they do, but they've had some big misses lately. And that sounded very reckless. I don't remember whether the meteorologist corrected them, but I hope they did, because those Hurricane Center storm force people are really good at what they do.
They're the best. They're the best in the best in the world. I don't think I think that's the misunderstanding. They're not missing the forecast. The storm changes, and as the storm
still
changes,
Think about going from 200-mile airs to 50-mile airs.
Yeah, where
We've come so far.
Yeah, the forecast is right. It's just a matter of that storm acting in a particular way. When miles matter, you have to understand the degree that it can change for you. That could be the difference of 5 feet or 15 feet. And you need to prepare for 15 feet.
We went on the air last Monday night and did a lot of talking. We had Rich Fields from WTSP. Was there anything that was said that night that you felt like you needed to counter, from where you were?
I think that saying that, we went to bed Tuesday not knowing what was coming our way, I think isn't exactly true, at least for me and what my team and what we were trying to explain on. I think by Monday, we were trying to tell people to prepare for a possible landfall in Southwest Florida. Is it likely? Maybe not, but it's possible. And by Tuesday, my messaging changed to this is likely. This is not possible. This is likely to happen. So I think if you, and like what James Spann was saying, I need to get messaging out to people that aren't watching TV. But if you were watching NBC2 or ABC7, you went to bed Tuesday knowing that Wednesday was going to be an ugly, scary day. And there was no way about hiding that. And also, I just think just the, Fort Myers Beach is not your typical beach town. It's not glitz and glam, and it's very family oriented. It's very quirky. It's lovely. It's a little eclectic. And that's why, because it's built so many years ago, that's why there was a lot of damage. Unfortunately, these aren't brand new spanking buildings out there that have the wherewithal to hold up. There are those, and those they stood, but there's more buildings in that area of Southwest Florida coastlines that is a little bit older. And unfortunately, that was what took the brunt of the storm.
Well, I hope that it'll retain that character. I was concerned about the story showing so many people that lived on boats. Did most of them make it? Were there a lot of fatalities on boats, or do we even know that?
I don't think we know. I think the concern is you see a jungle mangle of boats and mobile homes thrown into the mangroves, but you also don't know about what's in the Gulf, what went out with the surge. I don't think we know yet. I don't know where they are in their search and rescue versus search and, recovery. I don't know where they are within knowing that they've looked at everything that they can on the beach versus the ocean. So that I don't know.
I watched a lot of your coverage, was, really pleased and kind of surprised to see you back early on Wednesday morning. I know you were worn out. I just really admired what you did, and I was really thankful that you responded to my email. I didn't think you would even respond, and I just want to thank you for coming on tonight and spending time with us about it. I thought it was really a great cathartic show for us, and I hope it was for you too.
Yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me. I have the utmost respect for everybody on this podcast. It was an honor to join you guys and talk this through, and here's some advice. And I'm getting on TikTok because James Spann told me I had to.
Wow. That's very, very scary. So Allison, if somebody wants to follow you on social media, what's just plug anything you want to plug, go.
So the most common things I'm on are Instagram and Twitter, which is Allison Ray, ALLYSONRAEWX. Allison Ray WX is my Twitter and Instagram handle. Facebook, I've kind of gotten off because I feel like the algorithms, the timing, it makes no sense for weather to be on Facebook when you're posting something and someone sees it 5 days later. But you can always send me pictures on Facebook. That's Allison Ray NBC2. TikTok to come. Stand by for that handle.
Great. We will be anxiously waiting that new account to be fired up over there. All right, Bill Murray, what's your pick? Go.
Yeah, my pick is that really touching and moving story by NBC2 reporter Kyla Gayer, portraying Lori Fisk. And there's a story behind why they profiled her. They had talked to her in advance of the hurricane. So, it's not like it was one of those two quick things. It sounds like they went back to find her to make sure she was okay. And it leads to a fabulous story. So if you get a chance, please watch that clip. It's worth your time.
And any plugs for the future guests you typically do?
Well, I think it's amazing that we're booked all the way out to January. So,
wow,
our work is done here, I guess. So, we've got some great guests coming. We have a really special show coming up next Monday night. Jen's in charge of it. We're going to be talking to some young meteorologists who have, work with a disability in autism. And I think that's going to be a really powerful show. And she's going to take over the show on the 24th too. She's going to be Jen to the end of the month. She'll have a Penn State special show. If you want to come back for that, Allison, we'd love to have you. And we've got I think it's the WCM from Jackson, Kentucky. I met him at NWA, Dustin Jordan. We'll talk about the Kentucky flooding on the 31st. We got just tons of great guests all through December. And there at the end of the month, we'll have our regular Greg Carbon Meteorological Memories. He hasn't done it anywhere this year because he didn't get to do it at NWA. So it'll be a WeatherBrains debut, James Spann.
That's an exclusively only on this show. All right. Well, listen, Allison, thank you for your time. I know you're busy and it's been a wild couple of weeks here, but thanks for your service and thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening. For those that are new here, typically WeatherBrains is on the air every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. You can watch. There's a video version. Our YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/WeatherBrains. But we know that most of you listen. But one way or the other, thanks a lot. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, Allison.
Guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you
Bye,
guys
Rick.
so
Bye,
much.
Jen. Glad your voice is back, James.
Yeah.
That's good.